Tonight, the Senate is considering the nomination of Charles Rettig to lead the Internal Revenue Service. And let's be clear, this is not a typical IRS commissioner debate. Over the last several months, the Trump administration has weaponized the tax code to punish its political adversaries and benefit shadowy, far-right groups that seek to buy American elections. 2 months ago, just hours after Maria Butina was outed as an alleged Russian spy who sought to influence our elections, the Trump administration announced a new rule opening the floodgates to more dark money and foreign money in American politics. Dark money groups used to be required to disclose their donors to the IRS. With this new Trump rule, they won't be required to disclose at all. So, Mr. President and colleagues, here's what this all means. Over the next 2 months, while political ads flood the airwaves, millions of Americans are going to wonder how much of this stuff is paid for by law-breaking foreigners and special interests. Because of the new rule, the Internal Revenue Service and law enforcement, they're going to be in the dark as well. There are a few reasons why this new rule is unjustifiable and undemocratic. First, it got no debate in the Finance Committee, where we have jurisdiction over the tax code. It got no debate on the Senate floor. I do recall my Republican colleagues bemoaning what they considered to be anti-conservative political interference by the Internal Revenue Service, even when none was found. Now, with a Republican administration in office, they're changing the tax rules to allow more political interference by secretive outside groups and foreigners. Second, the timing of this announcement could not have more clearly underscored the rotten corruption at the heart of this policy. The new dark money rule was announced on a Monday night, the same day it was revealed that Maria Butina had been indicted for using the National Rifle Association as a conduit to influence our democracy with personal and financial ties. Another administration, seeing that kind of news come down, might have said, hey, we ought to hold off making drastic changes. They might have said, let's put a little more space between the indictment of an alleged Russian spy and the rollout of our dark money rule that would make the spy's job even easier. Not this Trump administration. They were undeterred. They obviously decided they couldn't wait to get this new rule on the books, making it easier for foreign actors and special interests to hide in the shadows while their dollars influence our elections. The tax rules and election laws in America with respect to who has to disclose political spending, Mr. President, they are already badly broken, especially after Citizens United. Now the administration is taking an enormous problem and making it much worse. The Trump dark money rule is only going to mean that individual Americans have even less faith that they are in control of our democracy. This takes us even further from the true meaning of one person, one vote. It puts even more power and more influence in the hands of the special interests. The fact is, the arguments for this change do not add up. I've heard members of the Trump administration, including the Treasury Secretary, say that none of this information was public before, so there's no reason to collect it. There's just no big deal here. Mr. President and colleagues, the overwhelming majority of Americans want more disclosure, not less. The administration, in effect, admits that they weren't using the information that political donors used to have to turn over. So it sounds to me like the Trump argument for this dark money rule goes pretty much like this. We weren't going to enforce the campaign spending laws anyway, so we decided not to bother collecting the special interest information at all. That is going to be cold comfort to the millions of Americans who are going to get clobbered by anonymously funded political ads for the next 2 months, Mr. President, before our election. My bottom line is the Trump dark money rule is anti-law enforcement, anti-democratic, and anti-disclosure. It puts a blindfold on law enforcement at the exact moment when the Congress ought to be coming up with new approaches to shed more sunlight on political spending and defending American democracy from foreign influence. Now, the Finance Committee's vote on Mr. Rettig's nomination was coincidentally scheduled to take place the same week the rule came down. Obviously, this issue was a focal point in the discussion. I raised the issue during the markup. Mr. Rettig had an opportunity to tell the committee he'd try to fix it. He did not. He wouldn't even acknowledge that there is a serious problem here for the cause of transparency and openness in our government. In my view, this rule ought to be put up to the same standard of scrutiny that the majority has applied to several other rules that were put in place by the previous administration. The Senate ought to use the powers granted to us by the Congressional Review Act, and we ought to vote on whether this rule should stand. But now the Trump administration is taking unprecedented steps to hide their dark money policy from that kind of scrutiny. Trump officials are keeping their rule off the official books for as long as they can to prevent the Senate from holding their dark money rule to the same standard applied to the Obama administration. Whether they publish the rule in the Federal Register or they confirm that it won't be published there but will be published elsewhere, the rule becomes eligible for a challenge under the Congressional Review Act. But so far, the Trump administration hasn't taken either step, even though I've asked for a response 3 weeks ago. As a result, here in the Senate, we have been unable to get a straight answer as to when it's coming or whether they plan to publish the congressional review issue at all. It looks to me like the administration has a policy on their hands that they know is corrupt, that they know is undemocratic, and so they're playing hide the ball. Because the more the public hears about the dark money rule, the less they like it. And we are going to keep talking about it. Mr. President, I want to close with one last point. There is lots about the Trump tax policy to be concerned about this evening. Senator Menendez talked about how blue states like Oregon, California, New Jersey, and others were hit with a gut punch, capping the state and local tax deduction. To target people in those states reveals the rotten core of the Trump tax policy. What I want to say tonight, as we consider the Reddick nomination, I don't know of anything more corrupt in front of this body than making it even harder for the American people to know where dark money, foreign money, is coming from. For that reason, I urge my colleagues to oppose the Reddick nomination. He was asked to acknowledge that this was a serious problem. He wouldn't go there. He was asked to describe what he would do to correct the problem. He wouldn't go there. This is as corrupt as anything I know of before the United States Senate, and I will be working with my colleagues to fix this dark money crisis, undo the damage the Trump tax law has brought on, and I will be opposing the Reddick nomination. And I yield.
Mr. President.